Hi, everyone. It's Alison, and I'm back with episode 18, Half Glass Empty Mentality. And so, those people, and maybe you are one, I definitely always struggle, or I always straddle that line. But I would say I for sure fall into the bucket of having a more half glass empty mentality than half glass full. So basically, what that really means, I just tend to look more at the negative than the positive side of things. And those people that like always have that, yeah, but like this is going to be so fun as long as this doesn't happen. Or I can't wait for this, but I don't want to get my hopes up too much, right? That person that always sees it kind of half glass empty. And again, this is definitely the state that I tend to live in. I tend to look at things from a half glass empty mentality versus a half glass full. So today, what I want to talk about is kind of like what that is, where it originates, how you can work with it to not let it stifle you, because it really keeps you in this just heaviness of always feeling like bad things are going to happen. I can't get too excited. I'm afraid to feel disappointed. All of this kind of inner chaos and kind of inner turmoil. And so that's what I want to talk about today. So it's basically when you live in this mentality of half glass empty, it's like you're living in a state of worry around things you can't control. Right? So let's say you plan a trip and you constantly worry what the weather's going to be like, or if your flight's going to be delayed, right? And it really takes you out of the excitement and the anticipation for the trip because you're only focusing on things that could go wrong and you have no control over that, right? And another way you know that if you're living in this half glass empty, you have really loud negative self-talk. So your inner thoughts will look like, you could have done this better. This is never going to work. I can't figure this out. This is so hard. And a lot of like, yeah, buts. Like, I'm so grateful, but I wish this would have been different. This was really fun, but, right? A lot of that type of inner thought, that's kind of what your inner world looks like. And another way you can really tell if you live in this state is because you're afraid to get your hopes up. So one of the things that this mentality does that I don't think most people are aware of is, yes, it seems to feel like a protective mechanism over feeling negative emotion. You're like, well, as long as I worry about it, and then if it happens, it's not going to be that bad, right? But at the end, if it still does happen, it still sucks. And what it does is also, as you're trying to avoid those negative feelings, you're also not allowing yourself to feel those positive emotions. So you're really missing out on the other side, on the like positive, good, better feeling, whatever you want to call them, feelings, right? So when you are constantly worried that your flight might be delayed, or it's going to be really stressful, or the weather's going to be bad on your upcoming vacation, again, you miss out on the excitement and the anticipation and the fun of planning and thinking about the vacation, right? And so it really just pulls you away from the positive and the negative. But that's what we believe it's doing. But really, it's pulling us away from feeling the positive because we're just setting in the negative, right? And so a lot of times what I see with myself and my clients is that you have a higher propensity to lean towards the negative, but then you also don't like that about yourself. So you try to either swing all the way to this like toxic positivity or overly positive thinking, which never works and it doesn't feel natural, or you judge yourself for that negative mindset. So not only do you have like this half glass empty mentality, you're also judging yourself, thinking that you shouldn't be this way, that it should be different, that you should be more positive, right? And so today, my hope is to give you some more insight on what that is, why it stays around, and how you can be in a better relationship with that part of you. Because that part of you is there to protect you. So the goal isn't to get rid of that negative mindset, which I know some of you are like, well, great. Now I'm just gonna be stuck with this, and I'll get into that deeper, but it's really to have a better understanding of what it's protecting you from, what it's afraid of, and why it tends to be so loud. So it's really just to create a relationship, because when you can understand and be in relationship with that part of you, it allows you to have more compassion and connection with yourself. So that's when you actually start to not set in that negative mentality as much, because you're now in relationship with that part of you. Right now, you're just trying to get rid of it. You don't like it. You're like, ugh, I wish I was more positive. I wish I was different. What that does is that causes that part to feel so rejected that it's going to just speak louder to try to get your attention. So what we want to do is learn how to create an actual relationship with that part of us, so it can be there, but it doesn't just take over. All right, so let's talk about why does this part even show up? Like we're not just born, some of us with the half glass empty and some of us with the half glass full mentality, right? That's not the way it works. Now, some of us are wired differently, and we do have, different temperaments for sure, but definitely it is a protective mechanism that was created when you were in childhood to help you stay safe. So what it is, it's a mentality of, if I stay negative ahead of time, I can't get hurt later. It creates this false sense of safety that you won't feel as bad later. Like if I can anticipate that my flight's going to be delayed, then when it actually is delayed, it won't bother me as much. But if anyone has been in a situation where your flight's delayed and there's issues at the airport, it still sucks. It's still really frustrating. You're still really annoyed. Just because you thought about it ahead of time didn't mean that it makes it easier when it actually happens, right? So that's kind of the trick that it plays. But the thought of actually letting that go, letting that part that says, hey, I have to worry about this, feels so foreign and unsafe because you really believe you're being realistic, right? Or you feel justified in this way of thinking. And it actually keeps you believe that it keeps you from making bad decisions or from doing things the wrong way. So when I talk about releasing it, it's going to feel really restricted because you're going to be like, I don't even know what that means. That feels way more scary than to just continue to think this way. Because again, it's there because you believe you're being realistic and because you believe that it actually keeps you from making the wrong decision. And that's what we're going to deconstruct today so you can see it a little differently. So let's talk about where this does originate from, right? Again, in your childhood, it would have looked like emotional inconsistency from caregivers. So the love felt conditional, it felt unpredictable, or it felt dependent on your performance. Hey, if I do well, I get a lot of attention. I get a lot of love. So in order to feel safe and that I belong, I need to perform. I need to achieve. It also could look like you were really praised for being the easy one, the responsible one, the mature one, the low maintenance one. And so you learned quickly that in order for you to stay in that identity, you had to be aware of any bad thing that could happen to prepare you so you could stay as the easy one. As long as I know ahead of time, then I can be fine. It also could have came from growing up around a lot of stress, emotional overwhelm, or unspoken tension in your house. Maybe your parents fought a lot. Maybe you had an older sibling that fought a lot with your parents, or maybe you were the child that fought a lot with your parents, created a lot of that tension. So again, it's going to create this survival state where you have to feel more prepared and in control. And you're going to mask it by saying you're just being realistic, but it really is a part that is trying to keep you safe from being hurt. You could have learned as a child that joy or ease was often followed by criticism, withdrawal, or chaos. So that would have looked like you're having fun and your parents or your caregivers come in and say, oh my gosh, calm down. You're too much. That's you're too excited. You need to have inside energy. They probably didn't say that back then. They probably were just saying, that's enough. You're too much, right? And so you learned really quickly that to be in those high vibrations, that more positive state was often met with like shame. Or maybe you would come up to your parents so excited to share something and they would just brush you off or be like, oh my gosh, what? I can't talk to you now or whatever, right? And so you learned that state, that higher state in the positive emotions was more dangerous. So it was a lot easier to stay in that negative state to always be prepared. Maybe as a child, you had to anticipate others' moods to stay safe or connected. So if you had a parent or a caregiver that was sometimes calm, but then they could be overreactive, or they would sometimes be lovey and then other times be really withdrawn, you would create this part to protect you so you could try to anticipate how they were to keep yourself safe. So if you could anticipate that they're going to overreact, you're already prepared, right? Then you don't have to feel the feelings that come up, most likely of shame, when you're being you in this excited state and they're in a stressed and they come and cut you off or react towards you, right? So then you become hyper vigilant and your system learned, if I can scan for what's going to go wrong, I won't be blindsided. So that's really at the base of the half glass empty mentality, is you're trying to anticipate what's going to wrong so you won't feel hurt later. Okay, so when I was a kid, I think I was like in first grade and my mom was at a meeting and my aunt had made her this like life-size Raggedy Ann doll, and it had this long hair. You know how Raggedy Ann has like really long shaggy hair. And so while she was gone, I asked my dad if I could cut the doll's hair, and he said yes. So I did, because I was like, oh my gosh, this poor doll can't even see anything. So I cut the hair and I made it look so beautiful. And I was really excited to share this with my mom. And when she came home, right now I can see as an adult, obviously she was extremely upset and she was extremely probably surprised and taken off guard. Anyways, as a child, I got in really big trouble. And so my system learned in that moment, when I'm excited, I was completely taken off guard. I thought she was going to be so excited to see how much better the doll looked. And I had gone through the appropriate steps, right? Like I'd asked my dad. So when she came home and I got in really big trouble, my system learned right then, like it's not safe to stay in that excited state. So I have to constantly be scanning for where I could have done something wrong, where I could have upset someone. It doesn't feel safe to just be excited because it was like squashed so quickly. And so I've had to do a lot of work to find that safety, to stay in that excited, because now as an adult, internally, that part of me always wants to pull me down. Like when I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so good. Immediately the part comes in and is like, wait, did you think of this? What if this happens? What if that could happen? What if this happens? Right. And it's there to protect me from that same experience. Because I felt so much shame because I was so confused as why she was so upset, right? And I thought I had done something wrong. And so what caused the conflict for me is I had actually, in my brain, thought I did everything right because I had like taken the right steps. So it's just a really good example of how that protective part was created right then because I didn't want to feel that way that I felt when I got in trouble. And so then until I kind of found that part and created a relationship with it, I basically always tried to suppress any type of joy or excitement. It felt like too much for my system because I was too afraid I was actually going to get in trouble. So when this happens, right, we have that protector part come up to help us stay safe. And what happens is it shows up in that way of that like negative thinking, that like anticipator, the preventer part. Again, it's like, as long as I can stay ahead and think worst case scenario, I'll be safe. So that part's job is to scan for problems, lower expectations, prepare for disappointment, and keep yourself emotionally armored. Because the protector believes that hope actually makes you vulnerable. It's too painful to feel excited because the letdown hurts so bad. So you could also have this if like as a child, you would get so excited and have a lot of disappointment. So maybe your parents were divorced and you had a caregiver, maybe your mom or dad was supposed to come see you, and multiple times they would have to reschedule. So it's like your system would learn like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. They're coming. I can't wait to see them. And then it would get canceled. And so your system learned it's not safe to feel excited because I can't handle the disappointment. And most likely when, especially people our generation, right, that when you did feel disappointed, there wasn't somebody there because it wasn't even around, that we didn't even have the words to articulate, like, I'm feeling disappointed. Our parents were probably just like, you know what, it's going to be okay. He'll come around, or he or she will come back. We'll find another time, right? They just tried to make us feel better. So then when we had those feelings of disappointment, we didn't know how to handle them. So these protector parts come in and they're like, oh, this is no good. We do not like feeling like this. So now we're just never going to get our hopes up, right? The protector part also believes that positivity leads to letdown. Again, if you were told that you're too much or you need to calm down, right? It's like your system learns being positive or being in this high vibration is too dangerous. I get in trouble. So I just need to stay more here, like more in the negative zone or more in the neutral zone so I won't get in trouble. And the other one that I think is really big, and I think this is what I see in a lot of clients, it's like, if I stay realistic, which really is like negative mindset, I stay in control. Like a lot of my clients will tell me, or a lot of people will say, hey, I'm just being realistic. But in reality, you're not being realistic because you say that because you believe you can control the outcome. But in reality, you really can't. It's like, hey, I'm just realistic. I know that flights are delayed, so I'm just going to anticipate it's delayed. It's like, that's not being realistic. That's just staying in a negative state, right? Hey, the past 3 vacations I've gone on, the weather sucked. So and I'm looking at the weather now, and so I'm just being realistic, right? But it's really, that's just like a mask to not have to feel the emotion. And that negative thinking, when for that protective part, that negative thinking helps you feel really grounded, right? It really does feel justified in your body because it creates this false sense of control. But in you, it feels like control. And it creates emotional predictability because when you are always anticipating the bad, you know what to expect, right? You're like, well, if I'm already disappointed ahead of time, then if anything happens, I'm good. And it creates this buffer against shame, failure, and heartbreak. So it really just creates a buffer against feeling, right? Again, as long as I can prepare ahead of time, it won't hurt. But I always think about, I've talked to a lot of people on, when you lose someone, when someone passes away, is it better for it to happen instantly, like completely out of the blue, or to have like a year where you know it's going to happen? And everyone has said, it doesn't matter. The grief is still the same. It doesn't matter if I have, like, you think if you have a year to prepare for it, then when it actually happens, it won't feel as bad. But that's not true. It still hurts just as bad as if it was taken right tomorrow, right? There's different, you will feel like more surprised, and more maybe overwhelmed, like this. The long term obviously allows you to give you more preparation, but in terms of feeling the grief is the same either way. And I think it's the same, that's the same concept, is like, we believe if we can feel the emotion, the negative emotion ahead of time, then when we actually feel it, if it actually does come to fruition, it won't be as bad. But that's the lie that we're believing, because it still feels just as bad. And now we've been feeling it doubly, because we've been feeling it all the way up until the actual incident, and then it happens and we still feel it. So that's what I really want to get across, is that it's a false sense of control, because you're still going to feel hurt, disappointed, rejected, whatever it is, you're still going to feel. So this negative mindset, thinking the half glass empty ahead of time, isn't really helping you. And what happens is, if you expect things to be hard, right, then you never have to really feel, you believe you don't have to feel when they actually are. So it kind of becomes a, yep, I knew it style of mentality. Yep, I knew this was going to happen, right? And then you can feel it in your body, right? When you start to get excited and this part kicks in and pulls you down. And that's because this part was formed before you even had logic, before you even had thoughts, because it's formed in the body and the nervous system. And so what happens is you feel this, like I said, this excitement, and you pull yourself down. You feel this worry and you just let it take over, and you go in these thought tornadoes where it becomes so negative inside your body. Right? And that style really originated when your emotions weren't consistently met as a child, when your needs felt like too much, when you learned that disappointment was worse than just feeling numb. Or when you didn't ever have enough internal or external safety to fully relax. And it really looks like I can handle any emotion that comes up. Because what this protector part, this negative mindset is really holding you from feeling, right? And so your system adapts by saying, I'll stay alert so I don't get hurt again. And then over time, like we talked about, this just becomes your identity. You're like, I'm just realistic. I don't get my hopes up. I'm prepared, right? But underneath, there's this very tender belief. If I let myself believe that things could be good and they're not, I won't survive the pain. And that's where the healing really comes in. And so it's like, now that you see this, how do you actually think differently, or how do you actually feel differently? That's going to feel so scary to your system, because positive thinking doesn't feel hopeful to you. It feels dangerous. It's like, I don't even know how to let this part go because I've had it for so long, and my system doesn't even feel safe. It feels foolish, right? Over here in this negative mindset, it feels realistic. But when I'm believing that things could just be good, that's just foolish. And that's because your nervous system, feeling positive, optimistic, it feels like too much exposure, right? Feeling hope feels like too much loss of control. And feeling trust, like trusting that it's all going to work out, it's too vulnerable without that guarantee. Something bad could happen, and you're afraid you can't survive the feelings that's going to come up. So when you just try to think differently, like it's like, okay, I'm going to just start trying to think more positive, right? Your system's like, don't do that. That's how we get hurt. Your body's just going to shut down. So you're going to snap into like overthinking, self-doubt, worst case scenario, emotional shutdown or irritation. And it's not resistance, it's self-protection, because your system is so afraid of being hurt. It's so afraid that you can't handle the feelings that are going to come up. It just shuts down, right? Because as a child, you couldn't. The vibrations in your body were too much for your little body, and there was nobody there to help you. So you had these protector parts that were created. So now as an adult, your job is really to start to heal that part, and it's really from a place of starting to feel all the emotions. So now that we've talked about all of that, let's talk about how you can start to make small shifts to heal it. All right, and here, I really want you to hear me. You're not going to heal this by just shifting into positive thinking, because it's a deeper emotional state that lives in your body that is actually running the show. So you really have to create the safety in your body before you can do anything. And so you really want to validate that protector, really build that relationship so you can feel safe and know that you're not going to abandon that part. Right? So it's like really opening up to see that that negative thinking did keep you safe, and it was there to protect you. So it would look like, of course you think this way. Your system learned it had to, right? And that alone should help create a little relief in your body. And then you want to shift from, instead of like, what I see a lot is kind of like these invalidating thoughts, like, well, it just is what it is. Or everything's going to work out, I guess. I'm just not going to worry about it. but that your body isn't going to feel safe in that either. So it's more like telling yourself, I can handle whatever comes up. I don't need certainty to be okay. I'm learning to feel all my emotions. This moment is not dangerous. I can handle it, right? Really creating those statements to ground your body. And then really separate facts from predictions. So your mind will treat fear-based predictions as facts. So it'll be like, oh, I knew that, like, I know the weather's going to be bad when we go on this vacation, or I know these friends are going to cancel on us, right? Well, you don't know. That's a prediction. That's not a fact. So you really want to start to separate out what is a fact versus a prediction and asking yourself, what is actually happening right now? Well, I'm afraid to be excited because I'm afraid I'm going to be disappointed. I'm afraid to feel okay because the worry feels like I have a little more control, right? And asking yourself too, what am I predicting because of the past? Because the way that your mind is looking at the future is by pulling up all the things in your past and all your experiences and telling you that's going to happen again. So let's say you've been on the flights are such an easy one. Let's say you've been on a couple flights, right? And like, I'll give you one of our examples. We were flying out of Denver and we hit a bird. I'm not even kidding. We were just getting ready to take off. You know, that part where you're like, lay back, your head's back. You're like, oh, here we go. And it was like, boom. We had this huge screech. There's smoke coming everywhere. We were like, I mean, it was scary. And the pilot comes on and said, we hit a bird. Okay. So number one, I could have not even rented a car and drove home is like 10 hours. Not even got on a plane again because this could happen again. Or I could have let this set in my system like, oh my gosh, I knew it. Like bad things always happen to me on flights. So then every time I go on a flight, I can think like, not necessarily that I'm going to hit a bird, but I guarantee something bad's going to happen. Oh my gosh, we're going to get delayed again. Oh my gosh, we're going to have really bad turbulence. Right? But all of those are just predictions based on my experiences in the past. They're not facts. And they're keeping me stuck in a negative state. Instead, I can just think, I'm excited for this upcoming trip. And if anything happens, I will be able to handle it. I will be there for myself and I will not abandon myself. I won't shift into negativity. I will just hold myself with compassion and feel the feelings that come up. Okay? Another step you can do is to introduce what I call micro hope. So not these like huge dreams or not like blind optimism, but micro hope is like, maybe this won't be as hard as I expect it to be. Maybe I don't need to solve everything today. Maybe there's another way I haven't seen it yet. Just giving yourself gentle possibilities. Right? And I actually am using this right now because I'm going to have to do a colonoscopy. I keep putting it off. And it's just like general because of my age, right? I'm 45 and I really am afraid of the discomfort. And I have created a whole story in my mind because, again, I tend to have a propensity towards negativity that it's going to be so bad. And so I've had to really use these like, whatever happens, I can handle it. Maybe it won't be as hard as I expect. And I kind of start to release it. And if it is hard, I'm going to be there for myself. But until then, I'm going to believe that I can handle it. And then the last thing you can start doing is to build that evidence through your body, right? So your belief system will not change through just thinking alone. We have to really work at the nervous system level. And so really creating those safety practices of like grounding, focusing on your breath, slowing your breath, tuning into your breath, tuning into your body, and letting one small thing feel good without anticipation of the negative. So it really looks like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this vacation. And as soon as that part comes up and it's like, yeah, but what if this happens, right? I always just think about like putting it in the palm of my hand and being like, I see you. I see you're afraid. and I'm going to hold you, but I'm also going to feel really excited. And I'm going to see if I can hold that vibration 5 seconds longer than normal. And I'm going to create immense amounts of safety for both of you to be here. All right. And then when your body experiences that safety without the consequences, without that part fully taking over, then the protector slowly loosens. When that part sees like, oh, I can be here and I can actually be seen and heard, and I can actually be in relationship or eventually accepted and loved, then I don't have to get her attention as much. Then I feel a little safer being with her. Right? So I really just want to reiterate, your negative thinking isn't the problem. It's just the evidence of how deeply you had to adapt to survive as a child. It was just created to actually protect you from feeling any pain. And remember, we don't shift from half empty to half full by forcing positive thinking. We do it by teaching the nervous system it's safe to hope again, and that you won't abandon yourself when it doesn't go as you thought. Or you're safe to feel this emotion that once felt really big in your body as a child. All right, you guys, I hope this has really given you some good insight into the half glass empty mindset or that negative thinking. And if you are someone that really sets in negative thinking, I hope this has helped you maybe shift into not judging yourself as much for having that mindset and seeing it as a protective mechanism. All right, I hope everyone has the most beautiful day, and I'll see you next week.